Yeah, so welcome everybody to our today's talk, Setting Up the Chief Transformation Officer for Success. Before we start, a note to the audience, this is being recorded and will be available later on our BearingPoint homepage. I will share a link to the landing page later here in that chat. So recently, more and more companies have installed a Chief Transformation Officer. The responsibilities vary greatly from company to company. Often it is intended to accelerate digital transformation, business model innovation, and/or growth. We want to focus today on the change management part of it and discuss what are the requirements to successfully lead and drive such a transformation as a CTO. And with me today are more than 100 years of experience in the field of transformation. Welcome, Professor Dr. Ulrike Baumöl, Sandra Hutterli, Guido Kaufmann, and Benjamin Gietzendanner. Professor Dr. Baumöl is a professor at the University of Liechtenstein and lecturer for digital innovation and business engineering at the University St. Gallen. She also led and supported several transformation programs, both in internal roles as well as an external consultant. Dr. Sandra Hutterli, Head People and Transformation and member of the IT board at SBB. She has successfully led different business transformations. Currently, she's driving the transformation of business and IT with around 2,000 employees at Swiss Railway, SBB, with a strong focus on leadership, collaboration, and culture. Dr. Guido Kaufmann was CIO in several national and international companies. Today, he's an independent IT interim manager, and he supports in that role companies in challenging situations, especially in course of their digital transformation, but also turnaround situations or mergers and acquisitions. Benjamin Gietzendanner, Senior Manager at BearingPoint, Head of Consulting in Western Switzerland, and lead of our People and Transformation Services. For more than 20 years, he has been accompanying organizations in their major transformations. On the one side, as an external advisor with 18 years of experience in consulting. On the other side, being the CTO of Piaget brand in the Richmond Group during 3 years. My name is Sarah Baker. I'm Senior Consultant at BearingPoint. I am part of the People and Transformation team and supporting our internal change management community. Welcome, dear guests. Welcome, dear audience. Thank you for joining in today. Before we now start into the discussion, another little note to the audience, there will be a slot at the end of our session to answer your questions. So during the discussion, you can just post them in the chat and for us to pick them up later. So today, after decades of research and practice around change management, many transformations are still struggling. We all know that the involvement of affected employees is being a very important factor. Yet, two major reasons why transformations fail are resistance of the people and lack of leadership commitment. So why is that the case? What actually does motivate people and how can they be picked up? Ulrike, you're the professor with also practical experience. You have a great overview on the approaches in different cases. What do we know about success factors of transformation coming from that broader database?
Yeah, Sarah, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I think you picked a very important topic today because, as you said, we have years and years of knowledge and experience with change management and with transformation. And sometimes we still stand there and don't understand why it's not happening. And from our studies and from practical experience, we see that still today, the so-called soft factors play an important role. That is communication and the right communication, that is the right flow of information, that is actually really the role of leadership. I mean, it's very old knowledge and we all know that, but still it's one of the mostly named points why transformation fails. And what is more, the training of people that they will be capable to be ready to do the new jobs, the new tasks, take on the new responsibilities. That is also one topic that is very often named. So obviously those factors remain now for years, or have remained for years now, the most important factors for driving successful transformation. And if they're absent, they're responsible for sometimes a stall or a failure. And for me, if I may add to that, it seems to be important that we not only do communication concepts, we know that we have to do that, but that we take care of the people, the needs of the people, and the specific culture of the company. Maybe when we talk about communication, we have to take care of the past. So we always say a future has a history, and maybe in the past communication has failed or was very successful. Why don't we relate to that? And sometimes a new communication concept is just made without relating it to the history and the culture of the company. And maybe one more point to be added, people are motivated by very different factors. And we know from research that motivation is very rarely the point, we have to do this or that to be successful and stay on the market, because that does not relate to the individual. It relates to the individual maybe to tell them if they are motivated by being on a team. So you and your team, you can succeed so much better with the new ways of acting, with our new processes, and we support you in being successful with your team. And maybe that relates much more to the motivation of the people than threatening them with failure. And maybe these are first points to think about how we can lead transformation.
Thank you very much for that insight, Sandra. What is your practical experience on that? Can you share some examples with us, maybe focusing on functioning motivation of people, or maybe where it didn't work out that well and why?
I think, as Ulrike has just mentioned, it's not about better concepts or better processes or tools. So it's really about people and our employees, but also the leaders. And I think if we want to really support them, we have to understand better the situation and what is new. And if we have a closer look at, for example, our project or transformation we have at Swiss Railways, where we bring IT and business together, and we really change from a very hierarchy-oriented organization to a working organization with end-to-end responsibility. We have to understand what really changes. And if we say we, then I mean everybody. So also the employees have to understand what is changing. And I think we have some factors which are obvious, like we know complexity, dynamics are increasing. But regarding then the skills we need, these are skills like we need more adaptability, flexibility, faster actions are required. And these are exactly these skills which have not been supported so much while we had for many years this command and control leadership. So I think one thing is really to understand that the skills required are new skills, that we have to invest in them, and that we have to see a need of developing these skills. The second point I want to mention is that we also have to understand that the change we are doing is not in a classical sense a change that is limited in time and we know exactly where we're going to. Perhaps in the previous years, we thought we can have like this change management. As Ulrike also mentioned, it was something like a project management. Mm-hmm. Today, it's not anymore this aspect. It's more like, I would say, a far-reaching transformation, which means that it's not limited in time, but it's more designed as a continuous change with inspect, adapt. This means regarding our employees, and this is what I observe in our company, but also in others, and we also see in research, that we have to deal with ambiguity. We have to find solutions, even if we don't really understand what would be the solution. So we need ambience and settings where employees also can try out, where they can experiment, and they have the possibility also to failure. And that failure is just a component of learning. And I think with these settings, we can help employees to evolve, to develop their skills. And then we go back to motivation. Motivation is, I would say, positively influenced by the meaningfulness of the work. but also the fact that we are skilled and that we can apply our competencies to our job and contribute to the value creation.
Thank you very much. Guido, I see you're nodding your head. Is this like experience that you can share as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you brought up the two expression, resistance and leadership. And I remember a case where it was quite obvious that we have to change. It was a project where we did transformation. It was in the phone book. I don't know if you remember the phone book. These were these thick books. This transformation from print to digital, and each year we had a decrease in turnover of 20%. So it was quite obvious that something has to change, because after 5 years you're dead. So that's quite simple. And people were completely aware that we have to change, we have to transform. But the question is how? And you said resistance at the beginning. I think I would like to bring it up. Usually in the company, what I see is more the silos that are the challenge. And there, as I said, we had one business that was very successful, money contributor, cash cow, but we knew in 5 years it's away. And so these people, you have to give them a motivation that they are still needed, but they don't get any money anymore from investments. And the ones that don't contribute any money at the moment, they get all the money and they are the heroes. And so to keep these two different cultures alive, because you need both of them to bring them to a team, that's a huge challenge. And as I said, it starts with these silos that have to be broken down, and to bring it all to a team that we have this we feeling. So we have to change, and not these are the new ones. They have to build up the new thing, and then the others, well, we will see. We hope we find a job for you afterwards. This is not the goal. And there I noticed it starts then, and that's now leadership. It starts from the top. And I remember we had actually two transformations. The first one was successful. The second one was a bit less successful. And we got feedback from employee in the first one. They said, well, when we saw you as management team on the board in the roadshows, we felt you're a team, you're together, you have the same goals. Your personal goals of your business units were not in the main focus. It was the overall company. And in the second transformation that was not so successful, we got feedbacks. We saw that you don't have the same direction, and it goes then down. So it starts from the top. You need this leadership, this role model that has to be played by the management. And then it starts also on the lower level. If it's not there on top, then the people will stay in their silos, because always focus on their boss. And if he doesn't think that he has to contribute to others, they won't do either.
Yeah, see, if I look at all of you three said, it's like it requires a whole paradigm shift. It's like the culture from the command and control to experiment and feel safe to do that. But it's also the shift from coming out of these silos and create a we. And then we can, like, this is the setup, and then we can speak about individual motivation, which I would like to know also from Benjamin. What was your experience? Like, did things like went well? Where did it like not go well? Especially that, for example, what Guido said, that's a very like practical examples. Do you have some examples like that to share with us as well?
I will start with an example or with a mirroring example, and saying that being able to carry a large transformation for a company is like to attend a sport competition, decide to climb the Matterhorn or to do a marathon. So if you want to do a large transformation, you have to be used to, you have to be trained. If not, it will not work. I mean, so if you are not used to transformation, you have to start with small transformation, and then you can do larger ones. I know a company which is a Dassault system. It's the worldwide leader in the 3D modeling applications. And already 15 years ago, they were changing the organization every year. So the people who are used to that, they knew that the 1st of July, the organization will change every year. And so that it would transform the company. And they were really used to that. It was not a big issue for them. So that's a bit the context, first of all, that you have to start with small transformation. And then I will give you, for me, the three key success factors. The first one is really to give sense. So in which context, what is the benefit for the employee? And the employee, they have to feel comfortable to explain to their friend, to their family, what is the transformation. So I have a client which is a waste collection company. So it's really a infrastructure business. So they have trucks, they collect the waste, they recycle it, and they want to change their business model to be a large player in the sustainability. So that gives really sense. And the employee, they are really proud of that. So the sense is not like we will be customer centric. It sounds like blah blah in companies that are not customer centric, and it's not really powerful for the employee, I would say. So, and what is really difficult is that every employee has its own sensitivity. So there is a need to give sense in various ways. And now it's not only the CEO who is driving the strategy and the employee have to follow. Now it's more the CEO who need to assess its strategy and see whether the employee are ready for that and they will follow. So that's the first one. The second key success factor is to empower the employee. So you have to define in your transformation some decision-making process, some delegation process that. So if you set up working groups, you need to empower them and to give them the right to take some decisions. So it's also a question of governance. So if you had an old-fashioned one-to-one management style, so it requires some change. So the leadership commitment has to be in favor of giving more delegation to lower level, to the middle management. And the third success factor is the motivation and the support. So it's not only financial incentive, it's not only fear. So when you think, 15 years ago, the model that Carlos Ghosn tried to implement in Renault Nissan with a functional working group that were feared, it's over. So at BearingPoint, we believe that we have to really support and follow all the employees. And that's why also we have made recently an acquisition of a software company called Steer.io, which is a tool to do some survey every week, every 2 weeks, every month, to capture all the small signals that we see in the organization to see the level of motivation and support of all the employees in the transformation. And then the CTO himself in all this transformation is the enabler. So she is the person who has to structure the transformation, to give sense, to empower, and to motivate.
Thank you so much. What I'm wondering now is, we speak a lot about that broader setup and cultural shifts and empowering people. So the CTO can be the driver and take on initiatives to bring the organization into the right setup and to bring a cultural change. So, but how do we cascade that down to the individual employee? Because as we heard, it's a very individual motive that drives every single one of us and that at the end of the day motivates us. So is it the CTO sort of coaching leadership to understand how these motives work so that this can be cascaded down to the team leads? How do we get down to the individual motivation and triggering that of the employees? Ulrike, maybe you have some thoughts on that, also with that very broad academic and psychological background.
Well, I think it all depends really on the people that are leading. So if you are a team leader and you understand your team and you know your people, then you can very well give the information and pass it on upwards and pass it on to the levels that maybe have strategic decisions. So for me, it's all a matter of passing on information about the people, and that is not chatting about people, but being aware of how our teams functioning, what makes them work, what makes them tick, and what is the individual motivation. And we have, for example, questionnaires for that. So this is looking at people and trying to think how it might work, but there are instruments for doing that and understanding how people are motivated. And you can observe, of course, but you have to take time. And I think that is a major point that Sandra is going to make, focusing on people and focusing on the task that has to be done. So it is not something, and I'm taking that a little bit up, it's not something that you can just do. You have to understand and really understand your team and want to understand your team. That's why I said it depends on the people. If you have leaders that are really interested in people and like people, then you know your team. And then you know what's going to happen. This is maybe how leaders are motivated, by knowing the teams, by working in the team. And then it's easy. Then maybe you don't really have to do a process how you cascade down or up, but just you're speaking about it and you know how it happens.
So transformation starts probably with upskilling the leadership to understand and get these senses. Or would you say in general, based on your experience, that was a given?
Well, it is difficult. I've seen many different styles of leadership. Let me put it like that. And some are more conventional and some are less conventional. And So you have to decide how you want to transform your company. Do you want to transform your company and keep most of the people on board and keep the philosophy of how you lead people? Would you like to keep that stable? And if you like to do that, you have to work with that. And then maybe you have more a command and control leadership in the end. But if you want to transform your company and you say, okay, for the future, we have to be more agile, we have to be more team orientated, maybe, and now it's a bit hard to say that, but maybe you have to get a new leaders. Because I'm not sure, I'm sorry to say, but I'm not sure leadership is something that you do from your heart and from your inner motivation and your convictions. And this is the point. So if you like people and if you want to share your experiences and want to build teams, then you do that. If you feel more comfortable in a hierarchical structure, you feel more comfortable there. And you can't be just made. It's the same with other people. You can't make people to do things that in their inner self is not in them. So people are going to get unhappy. And I think this is a tough decision you have to make. What is the real transformation that you would like to do? And are the people really, really from their innermost self, so to say, willing to follow?
Perhaps I can add a very practical example. We're just doing now at Swiss Railways, because it's very interesting what you said, Ulrike, and I just would like to go even a step further. I think we already have understood that with technical evolution, so if we have software, whatever, so we know now that the approach is really an agile approach, that we do like experiments and we try out and we have MVPs. And sometimes we forget that actually it's the same for leadership. We should also take leadership as something that is constantly evolving, and it's something we have continuously working on it. And it's not just enough that somebody just has, a course or something and then I am a leader. So leader is really something that evolves with the situations, with reflections, with learnings. And what we actually try out at the moment is we separated even the leadership role in different rules, because we said, if we have a closer look at the leadership role, it's really heavy what you should all cover. And what we did now is we separated the subject matter experts. So we have really like leaders who concentrate on architecture, they concentrate on how we collaborate and so on. So we have this part. And then we have the personal leadership. So leaders who just care about the human being, the culture, the mindset. And with this separation, we can have like a closer look on the different skills leaders need, and we can somehow professionalize them. And what we do now, I mean, we don't have the recipe how it should be, but we have somehow a vision, and now step by step, we develop these skills, we develop this model of different kinds of leadership, and we try to bring them together, but with different persons. And this is quite an exciting journey, I would say, we're on. And I would say the first impressions we have and the first results also we have by interviews we do, because we do each 6 weeks, we do interviews with the different leadership rules. And what we have learned is the first thing is not easy. So it's really something you have to go step by step. But what we also have discovered is, since we're doing this, the awareness is much higher. And I think if we want to learn and improve, awareness is the first step. And with this focus on leadership, we get awareness, we get also room to experiment. And I'm sure we will, our steps forward will be probably a little bit faster than if we would not have chosen this model. So leadership is not just something you do aside your job. It's a full-time job.
It's a very interesting approach.
Maybe at the moment, I think we see it quite clearly when you watch TV football, European football championship. I always like that the trainers or the coaches, some of them are really quiet. They have the strategy. They do not interfere. Others are talking. I think the challenge there, you see it clearly, is you have this team, everybody has to know his position, and they can't do anything. The people on the field have to put the goals or to avoid the goals. And I think that's a challenge, to position everybody to learn his guys. And there are stars like Ronaldo, and you can't change them. They are like they are, but put them together. And I think that's the challenge. And I was in IT in several transformation, and there always you had these legacy guys that they had to do the boring jobs, and then the ones that could work with the new technologies, big data, artificial intelligence. And you knew both are important. You need a stable environment. That's why the legacy people are important. They have to provide functionality for the front end. And you have to give to both groups or to all groups a motivation. And you need defenders, and you need people who make the goals, and both are important. And I think that's also an important role of the leader, to bring each person in the right position where he can do a good job.
To bring the person in the right position and also value in what each individual is doing. Benjamin, giving you the last word on this topic.
Yes, I wanted to give you some practical example, and also to link with the question in the meeting chat, but that simple things to do, that like not so for a CEO, not doing or writing the strategy only himself. And if you imagine that you can do a bottom-up exercise, so with several employees, and to imagine your strategy. So you already have the buy-in of some employees. You already are connected with the middle management, with all the layers. So by just doing this kind of exercise, it's already a way to do the transformation and to be a bit in advance, and to do it really upstream, and to already have the buy-in, to know what motivates your employee, what will not motivate them. You can have your own perception, and you know that you want to go in that direction. And if it's not the sense for your employee, you know that you will have to put a lot of effort in the change management in that area. And otherwise, you can also rely on your employee. They know the process, they know the company very well, they know the customer. And so you have to onboard them in the transformation.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's such an interesting topic with so many aspects and angles to look from and to consider. At the end of the day, it's human interaction, and it's a bunch of individuals, which makes it even more complex, and on the other hand, even more interesting. And probably one of the most important aspects of change management, how to get your people following you and sharing that common goal and creating a sense of we throughout an entire organization. Unfortunately, in the given time in today's session, we are not able, it's absolutely impossible to come to a final conclusion here, but thank you so much for sharing all these important aspects and insights. I think what is becoming very obvious is the Chief Transformation Officer, as a leader of the transformation in that sense, first and foremost has to be a people's person, with himself strong leadership skills being a top priority. However, a successful CTO must have a multifunctional profile. So besides the leadership skills to lead and stand discussions on a technical level, there are also the functional skills required. And is a T-shaped profile the right foundation? Are several pillars in a sense of areas of expertise required? And how deep does the technical, functional, or industry knowledge need to be? So based on your personal experiences, maybe starting with you, Sandra, looking at from an internal perspective in a sense of internal role, what were the skills that you needed or missed the most?
Yeah, perhaps I start with your first point you mentioned, like the T-shaped model, and probably this leads just to your question. I think it's definitely not a T-shaped model we need. It's really an M-shaped model, which means that a CTO needs really an experienced, a bundle of different competencies. And I would say especially a CTO has to be a problem solver, and also a business leader with high emotional and interpersonal skills, as we have seen in the discussion, in a previous discussion. But I think in this broad profile, he should also have really this strong cross-functional background, as you said. So, which means that she or he has to be familiar with a variety of different business situations. I would not say that it has to be very technical, but it has to be more, I would say, really broad and cross-functional, and especially to have just experience with different challenges and then approaches to challenges, because as a CTO, you will be faced with different problems you have to solve. And I mean, even you do not have to solve them yourself, but you have to be like an integrator and to help solving these problems. So it's really positive if you have already experienced different challenges and business situations. And then I think it's also very important that a CTO is a really integrative person. So a person that is able to collaborate with the whole management. I would say in the positive case, and this is really what I recommend and what I feel myself, it's really important that you're integrated in the management team, so that you are a member of the management team. So this is less like skills you're missing, but it's a position you need, because you have really a huge influence on business decisions from, I would say, an overall view of the organization, and as well as also the understanding of leadership and collaboration, as we said before, and therefore you have a high impact on value creation within a company. And therefore it's important that you're a member of the management team and that you really contribute also to link the management to the teams, to the employees, and that you have this it's like the view from the helicopter, and you can interfere when it's needed, where it's needed. And by interfering, I mean more like giving inside information, not action. So the action has to be done by the others. And that's also my perhaps last point I want to mention is a CTO role cannot be delegated like in the previous time. And I come back perhaps to what I have mentioned earlier with the change management. When we had this area of change management was often something you have just positioned a little bit besides. You had somebody from HR coming inside, well, not inside, but just besides and doing change management. And you thought, okay, then it's covered. And with the CTO, as I have said, this is a long-term responsibility. It's a long-term transformation. You need somebody who stays within the organization, who feels responsible. Saying that, it does even not mean that it has to be an internal person. It could be also an external person, which is integrated in the management team, because nowadays, as we have, I would say, a more integrative approach of employees, and we have employees, external or internal, collaborating together. So this is what I see at SBB. So in our project where we have put business and IT together, we do not do anymore any, I would say, difference between external and internal people. We put them together in teams, you collaborate, and this no matter whether you're external or internal. And I think this could be the same for the CTO. So even if it is external person, but it has to be a person integrated within the team and collaborating and having this position of influencing management team.
Thank you very much. That's a very good lead over. So we just heard that the integration in the leadership team and being a member of it is a very important factor. Is that something you coming from the outside as an interim, like as a temporary function and person, how do you experience that and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, sometimes it's really a benefit to come from external. I remember, as I said at the beginning, the silos or the business units or the goals of the departments are there. And when you come in as an external, you can show them. So actually, it's not about building my future because I will leave again. So I'm here to find the best way for the company overall. And you can be more objective when you look for the solution. And bring the people together. You don't have the history that is there. So there are really many benefits I observed. And sometimes that was really also the goal from the management. They said, well, okay, we start with an interim manager to bring it to the flow, and then we hand it over to an internal person. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. So Benjamin, comparing these two perspectives, is that something, would you say maybe a mix, the ideal CTO profile is a hybrid or a mix of an internal and an external person, which is obviously not possible, but I hear it's very beneficial to have the external view and be like very not related to politics and internal like siloed goals and personal goals, but just like that bringing in the overview, but also having that all the network and the personal connections.
It's really patterns that we observe in numerous companies. So the question is not on the recruitment or on having the CTO in-house. So that's not the question. The question is more, do we have to promote someone who was internally in the company on an operational role, or do we have to hire someone coming from outside of the company? So like we need a former consultant to drive the transformation in our company. And then the question is to balance, like, we promote someone from the inside the company, so he will have his network, he will know the business, but maybe he will miss some technical skills on how to drive the transformation, how to manage a portfolio of projects and so on. And then if you take a former consultant or someone coming from outside of the company, he will miss the internal network, this relationship, or the information on the governance and so. But at the end, this question is often more based on these hard skills. And for having seen a lot of companies, even if they choose option 1 or option 2, they are finally facing the same issue, is that it's a question of drive, it's a question of motivation. I would say that the truth is elsewhere. It's more a question of soft skills, and you need to hire someone that will drive the change in the company. So we come back to the leadership skills that we already discussed. Someone that is really empathic, that can explain the sense of the transformation, that will hear also all the employees to know how to drive this change, and to put the right change management action really dedicated to the top management. So it's change management has to be done also to the top management, middle management, and to the various business, and to adapt it, and to really to be able to change also, so to be someone that will be agile and able to change the approach in the implementation of the transformation and in the change management.
Thank you. So we're coming back again to like the very core skills, which are the leadership skills. And no matter if it's someone coming from the outside supporting that, maybe temporary, or consulting someone who is internally in that role, it really needs that leadership skills. So coming back to more the hard skills, how much of these skills can I just stuff or like cover with a team that is around the CTO? Guido, what is your experience on that? How much can you just like consume the expertise also for discussion, maybe hard functional or business discussions from a team?
Well, I think it's, as already said, it's important to listen to the people, and I think that's more important than even than speaking. So listening and finding out what's the problem, having open ear for them. And I think it's even hindering if you give them the feeling that you know it better, so that you have the complete knowledge of it. Then they don't trust you because they are the specialists. And that's why I think these hard skills are not so important. As we said, the opposite. So don't play them too much, that to say, okay, I did it in the last company like that, you have to do the same. That's not very much appreciated by the people. So they are the experts. And as you also said, you have to enable them in power. That's the goal. And that's why I think if you can thinking in networks and talk and be structured, you have already the hard skill that you need, I think, personally.
Thank you. Ulrike, maybe to close that topic, I would love to hear your view on that, bringing these different perspectives together and even adding your academic perspective on that to conclude or sum up. What is your view on that? What would you have to add?
Well, thank you very much. And a movie was running in front of my eyes when I heard you three talking, and about the integrative person that we need, and the empowerment, and that no matter what approach that you choose, that people's skills and people persons are most important. And the most important projects or successful transformations I've seen was really when a good team was working together. And the good team was really very often actually made of internal people and external people. And what I feel is that the overall responsibility should be internal and the networks should be there. Benjamin mentioned that the networks in the company is, I think, important, that you have the informal networks, the informal information, and know what's happening, so to say, between the offices. And I think there the taking on full responsibility and focusing, as Sandra said, on the change management task is very important, I feel. And nonetheless, if you have a good and people person consultant, then it's very valuable that you can talk, that you can consult, that you can ask for advice, and that you can really integrate this person into the team and support the whole process. And as Guido said, not as somebody knowing it better, having had a lot of projects and having done it 1,000 times, but rather listening to people and taking on a new perspective. And actually, I've seen it 2 or 3 times being part of such a team. And it's also actually fun doing that. And all of a sudden it gets a dynamic that even if you have resistance driving change management, and there's a question in the chat from Marine, I think, what do you do against internal resistance of leaders to drive on change? If you show the team, if you show the dynamics, and if you make, I think, them part of it, then it's much more easy to support change rather than you're on the stage, you're all alone, and somebody says, so now you are driving change and you're the person and everyone is looking up at you. And that's what I think is important. And coming back to the question of what skills do you need to have, I would fully support what's been said before. And we know that from research too, that the most important feature of a person leading change is the personal skills and being a people person. And the rest you can integrate, you can just buy in or make people help you. People are happy to help you if they are needed, and people being like for 30 years in the company and they are asked to help, they're happy to do that normally, if you listen and if you take them seriously. So I think that would be the points I would like to make.
Thank you so much. I would love to keep this very interesting conversation going. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and I would like to dedicate a few moments to our audience because I'm seeing there are a couple of questions. Thank you. You already picked up on one, Ulrike. So let's have a look onto the other questions we see from Ladina. She said it was mentioned that new skills such as dealing with ambiguity must be developed. However, from my experience, organization or leadership teams very often don't fully understand these concepts themselves. What are practical recommendations to start the development of these new skills? And I see Sandra nodding.
Yeah, I mean, this is really not an easy task. So it's not a skill like another one you can just learn in a course or somehow, or tell somebody how to do. So what we do, and this is really something very simple, but at the moment something very effective, is, well, first we really have settings where you discuss about this. So it means that in a working organization, in a team, they have, after 7 weeks of working, they have 1 week where they reflect their work, and they reflect especially these points. So where did we struggle? Why did we struggle? And often it's just ambiguity. It's because, yeah, you can go this way, so, but you have to decide, you have to try out. And they really discuss it on the topic when it happens, and they are given time for that. So it's something we say it's important, and we give you time for that. This is one point. The other one, I think it's important that you do not only remain within your team, because you can get blocked very easily within a team. So we open it up. So if we have like cases, so where we have this, I would say, challenge, and a very concrete one, and I think ambiguity you can't have just theoretically, it has to be very concrete. So if we have a case, somebody can offer this case, and we have a very easy format, and this is called open learning sessions. So you can just bring in a case, and whoever from the whole company is interested in that can subscribe. And we allow not more than 10 people within such a session. But if there are more people, we open up more time slots. So as many people as want to discuss it have the possibility. And then there's just a moderator, nothing else. So you don't have really to prepare anything. So you have just a case, and everybody is contributing, is reflecting, and we discuss about it. So how would I approach, what would be my feelings, my fear, and so on. And we tried it just out, and it's very positive, and we thought it's something we start with, and now it's already established after 5 months, and it's something people really use. And the feedback at the end mostly is, for me, it was so good first to hear that others have the same challenges. Second, it was very important for me to hear different approaches. So now it's easier for me for next time to choose one of those or to experiment a new one, and not just the only one I know or our team has chosen. And the third point was, it was just good to be outside my team in interaction with others, and I can bring that back to my team. So I can even give value to my team because I bring back some new insights I have taken from this conversation. So this can be 2 approaches, but I mean, there's not a recipe. I would just say try out different approaches, but be in a dialogue and concrete.
That also goes back to the point that you made earlier, speaking about the culture of experimenting and giving people a safe space to share thoughts and go away and maybe correct it later. So again, the culture, I think, as you said, is a very important factor to provide that space and make that happen and get people going and trying out.
And I might add that finding the same language for the concepts, that's important. Mm-hmm. We don't know for sure, and there's not one definition, for example, of ambiguity, but we have a common language and we have a common understanding in our organization on what we think it is and how we deal with it. And I think that is what is happening at Sandra's teams, for example, when they do those workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's directly related then to the failure culture, that you can also talk about the failures that you made when they are not then hidden, so they are transparent. And I think that encourages you then also to go away because, it's accepted when I make a failure.
Thank you very much. So we have 5 minutes left. We can take on one more question. So Marine, I see you posted a question on that plays into transforming or changing the culture. Do you think that to successfully transform a company to a complete new culture, do you need to change leaders? And we already heard there might be different approaches that could be not changing the leaders, but changing the role of the leaders. But still, is that in every case doable, or is that previous leader also might have, it's the challenge, how do you say, that they might perceive it as they have been on a wrong path before. So how do you, maybe without changing that, and now I'm changing maybe a bit your question on that point, because we discussed that, how can we bring them on board and feel valued in that sense, what we also mentioned earlier?
I think you have some leaders or some CTOs that can make this shift. So we have done some journeys to bring some C-levels in the Silicon Valley for them to discover new way of working, new business models, and in companies with really strong cultures. And some are able to make this change if they are convinced it's the good thing for the company. But I would say that next will be, so one, the CEO will be keen to change the culture. It will be now to the board that you will have to make this change, and often so we forget them in change management initiatives. But sometimes you have to also include in your change management roadmap and yes, in your stakeholder map, the board of the company. Sometimes there are representing some investors for certain business models, and if you want to make some transformation, to change some business models, or to, like you said, Guido, to experiment. If they are low-risk investors, so they will not be very open with this kind of new way of working, like to experiment and saying that we will launch 10 projects and we know that 8 of them will fail. So that's emphasized the need also to have your board with you in this transformation, and also not to forget this upskilling of your board for this kind of changes.
And Sarah, perhaps you mentioned just one important point. I think this is very important for our leaders. The way they have led before has not been wrong. So it's not about now it's good and before the past was wrong. We have to understand that the situations change, and this requires new approaches of leadership. And I think it starts there. We should not, like, speaking in black and white. So it's a transformation also for the leaders. And each leader has a different starting point. What we try to do is to go in the same direction, to evolve in the same direction, and to support them to develop. But not by saying it was wrong what you did, you have to change. No, we evolve with the situation that changes around. And I think this is very important, to have a positive approach.
That also means, concluding on that everybody can be part and a true representative of the new, let's say, identity in course of a transformation, or at the end, which is not really given as we've learned before, but at the end of one transformation path. So everybody from the old world can be a part of that and a true representative of that.
Yeah, and as we say, for business, we have this view that each business does not transform in the same speed. So there are different speeds of transformation. And again, it's the same for human beings. We have different speeds of transformation, and we have to accept that and to support that.
And I'd like to add, Sandra earlier talked about positioning, and I think this is the important part. It's a repositioning. So people putting in places where they feel comfortable, and there I think the story comes round to the beginning. So adding to the motivation of people. People need to feel comfortable, and then they can do what they want to do. And I think the crucial part in a transformation project or process is to find the right position for the people. And if you can do that, then everybody can be a representative. And I think that is the hard to really do that and to find the position. And it can take a while. As Sandra said, the change speed is different in each part of the organization.
So maybe concluding on that, because we're out of time. We're already one minute overdue. But the CTO, in that sense, if we also think back of what Sandra said at the beginning, it's not the transformation going from A to B, it's rather changing the state of mind to getting people, also what Benjamin said, being used to changing, and so that this comes to normal. So maybe one of the most important tasks of the Chief Transformation Officer, on the one hand, to change the hard facts like processes and the setup to get people to create the space for change, but then just teaching the people to do the change on themselves, to get used to it, so that at the end of that journey that they can walk alone and change is becoming something natural to them.